to, maybe set up a series of, maybe set up a YouTube channel, for example, in their industry, and have, present the right voice or reach the right market?
Sure. So I'm going to start with a 20-minute strategy call. I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to assess your channels, and I'm going to look at that and figure out what you need and where we need to go from there. The important thing is the audience and understanding what that voice sounds like and what the audience needs. So I want to learn and understand first before I really dive into that. The biggest piece of that is the context of what you need and how you want to show up, and then figure out what that looks like from there.
I know y'all aren't shy.
Yes, ma'am.
When you talked about paralleling
Stories? Yeah.
How are
Sure.
you getting that out, and where are you sharing that? What platforms are you? Is it just a web base, or do you need to download an app?
So I haven't. So Pearland Stories is kind of the holistic brand. I came out of local news, and we have a I see a deficit for covering things like local politicians. Like the chamber's starting to do a better job of that now. They're doing some really good stuff. But historically, it's been really hard to find information about candidates outside of whatever Community Impact decides to cover or the Chronicle Neighborhoods decides to cover. There's really nothing else other than their own marketing. So that was one of the things I wanted to do. Where that shows up, I have a Facebook page, I have a website, and the model that I'm looking at is traditional local news style, objective, not focused on sharing, highly emotional stuff. I don't like, that's effective. I don't think it's helpful for a local community. I think we need to be more focused on information, how to get that. It's going to be on Spotify, iHeartMedia, Apple, iTunes. Those are the main places that the podcast will be, but it'll be promoted through the Facebook page, which is the primary channel I'm pushing, and the website is where everything goes back to. Sure. Yes, sir.
Question. You mentioned right now about not having like emotional articles or things like that. How do you balance? That obviously works. It obviously draws to other,
Sure.
other marketing or other channels. How do you balance not using that to draw an audience? I guess
100%.
what's your method to draw an audience?
So, in a local news context specifically, so growing up in that space, I learned to be a journalist from an objective perspective. You take the information, you present it, you let people make their own, that's not how things are done now. That's not how things have been done for 10 to 15 years. My goal is to just promote information, to tell people what's going on and give them a way around how to think, not what to think. So just to help them understand things from a broader context and to let them just see the information and make their own decisions. So it's not meant to push bias one way or the other, but there's a deficit of information. I just think the information needs to be out there.
So you spend a lot of time in ministry in the church world. What have you seen has been some overlap and maybe some differences in between the business world and
Sure.
church world? What are some of the biggest takeaways that
Sure.
you've been able to carry over?
I'd say everybody's just trying to figure things out. There are a lot of people who pretend to know exactly how to do things in the SEO world or in the GEO world, or you see a lot of consultants trying to sell you that they can fix your problem 100%, or that they can definitely give you a certain outcome. And frankly, everything shifted in October around most of that, and people are still learning. It's a continual learning cycle across the church world, across the business world. Everybody's trying to better understand how to interact with their audiences. Facebook took away that in 2018. They changed their algorithm to where it wasn't really focused, and you only have access to 3 to 5% of your audiences. So just posting isn't getting you anywhere. Posting in certain ways generates more connection, but when you get engagement through certain ways, you train the audiences to do some things that are going to negatively impact you over time too. So most of it's focused on short-term gain instead of building a brand the right way, the proper way, building your voice the proper way. They're talking about there being a trust deficit right now, where people don't trust you and you have to really earn that. The types of practices that make you successful in the social media space go against that most of the time, because it's that quick click, that quick view, and people get frustrated because the links are hidden, they can't really interact with your stuff the way they want to, and they don't have direct access, and it's more frustrating for them. And then once you do these lists and all the stuff that, like, hey, click here and go get this, and then they get there, they're continually disappointed. If you give them something with, a middle level of expectation up front, and you build your voice and you build trust and you actually have a conversation and you actually engage in a way that connects them as a big brand, that develops a relationship over time. And that's not going to be successful up front, but over time, you're going to grow your brand and you're going to be successful because you build a relationship. Yes, sir.
Who does that well?
Who does that well? Not a lot of people these days, because everybody's focused on the quick clicks. But yeah, I would say Bishop Harvey, because that's the context that I know, does a really good job of managing relationships and maintaining that space. She has a consistent voice. She knows how to show up. She connects with everybody, and she brings people together rather than trying to engage. She'll comment on topics, but she does it in a way that offers I wouldn't say a middle of the road perspective, because she definitely has opinions, but she does it in a way that doesn't shame people for having a different opinion, and she does it in a way that builds people up and brings them together rather than dividing, and I think that's needed. Yes, ma'am.
From like a marketing standpoint, what problems do you solve? So that way, if somebody in this room knows someone with that problem, we're like, oh, I know exactly who can help you. Like, what is the problems that you solve, and who should we be referring to?
Sure. I give executives capacity. I give leaders capacity, because most of the time they're focused on leading their space. They're focused on building their teams. They're focused on solving problems within the organization. Their communications departments can help with some of that, but where they need capacity to do their own thought leadership, they often don't have time to sit down and write. They often don't have time to really focus on that. So I help them focus and learn what their actual goals are and help them develop content around how they can. Sorry, that distracted me. my Star Wars. I thought I turned it off. So, apologize. I'm going to be a bad example. So I give leaders capacity to build better content that really engages and resonates with their audiences, where they don't have capacity. I'll sit down and listen to them and help them focus their goals and focus what their priorities are, and then I'll help them build stuff in their voice that pulls their content together around that and helps them meet those goals in the content space.
So is it like creating content for them, other than obviously the scripting and the voice?
Sure.
That, but is it also like creating videos and posts for them, or are you mainly working with the leadership side of their brand voice and how they show up online?
So it's kind of both and. It's primarily understanding what that voice is and what those goals are, and then writing content across platforms to do that. So I can do video scripts, I can do keynotes, and I can build the graphics for the keynote speeches. I can match it depends on their audience, and it depends on their specific channels that they want to target. So that's going to look different in LinkedIn versus Facebook versus Instagram versus, whether they're trying to do internal stuff for their own organization versus their own personal branding and personal thought leadership. So it just depends on the space they need, which is why everything I do is kind of custom, but it's going to depend, the outcomes are going to depend on their goals and then trying to match those specifically. Yes?
So who is the typical client that you work with? Like
So I'm still building. I've had a couple of smaller clients. I haven't connected directly with the type of people I've served in the past, so with my company. But I'm trying to work on my own marketing and my own stuff, and I'm to the point now where I'm just starting to engage in that space. I've had a couple of good calls, but I haven't really moved forward with that yet.
And who is the perfect client for you? Who is a good connection for you?
Mid-sized companies, because larger companies really have access to those resources. Mid-sized companies struggle sometimes because their communications department either isn't fully engaged in all of those pieces, or they're not large enough to really help support the executives beyond what's needed for the board and for internal comms. And mid-sized organizations the same way. So I've worked with a lot of nonprofits. I've worked with a lot of faith-based organizations. We had 700 churches, and I would coordinate across the space for whatever they needed. So there were churches that had 50 members. There were churches that had 10,000 members. So everything within that space, I've done things around that, and I'm prepared to support their communications, whatever they need in that space.
So what I'm hearing is that you're willing to work with small businesses at a discount while you grow and get the big.
We can have a conversation, but yeah, I'm going to meet whatever the budget looks at. So if, and that's going to depend on the amount of time that it takes. But yes, of course, I'm more community focused. That's where my heart is, and I'd prefer to work with small businesses and smaller organizations because they need the help the most, and I can give it. Yes, sir.
So for content writing and mirroring somebody's voice, how long does that typically take for you to learn, learn their voice and be able to, engage it into your audience?
So I'd say one, that depends. The old way I would do it depends on their level of comfort with AI tools, because I'm going to do whatever they allow. AI helps me in some ways, so I'll use that if they're comfortable with it, or if there's not a legal reason not to, but I'm completely upfront and honest with that. If it's just me doing the assessment manually, it's going to take longer. It's going to take a few hours to dive in and look at what they're doing and what they've done in the past and understand who that is. But I'm also going to have a conversation with senior leadership, and I'm going to interview board members. I'm going to interview people who are leading the organization, and then I'm going to interview frontline staff to try to do kind of a focus group kind of thing where I better understand and can engage with that to know what their thoughts are, what their perceptions are, and then look at different perspectives within the organization to see kind of how that comes together. So it's not just I'm going to look at your social media feed and make a quick assumption about stuff. I'm going to have deeper conversations and dive into what their actual goals are, what their audiences look like from their perspective, what they want their audiences to look like, and kind of how they engage in that space. Yes, sir.
So what you do is absolutely needed, and I feel like there's a lot of I guess like misinformation out there, and maybe like and knowledge, or like people don't understand how much that's needed.
Right.
Right. To have a voice, and with all the attention grabbing and everything out there. What's the type of, I guess, pushback that you've seen in presenting what you do? Like how when I'm trying to present to a client or something like that. Like,
Sure.
What's the biggest challenge that you've faced in trying to explain what you do and the need for what you do?
Capacity is already limited. It takes time to do branding, to do content development the right way if you really want to make an impact. The bigger brands are really good at this because they spend millions and millions of dollars on it, and they have experts. Smaller businesses, especially now, are missing out because they also don't really have the time to engage, but they also don't have the understanding or probably they don't think that it's possible at that level, right? They're going to do what's good enough. They're going to throw stuff out there. They're going to just put pieces together and just not have a strategic plan. They're just posting to post, right? Because somebody told them they need to post because they want visibility, and they're frustrated because they're not really getting visibility because what they're doing isn't really strategic. They're not connecting. They're just posting when they have time. They don't have a plan in place. So they need to understand that it's possible at that level, and being able to share that there's just a few little short things to do to get started that even they can do themselves that will make that better. And then just being thoughtful around it. But yeah, it sounds expensive, it sounds time consuming, and trying to get past those barriers is going to be the first part.
What's your biggest challenge right now?
Honestly, no, yeah. My bigger is getting stuff going. It's taking me a while to launch, and I've been working behind the scenes on all of my own stuff for several months, and I'm finally to the point where I'm putting stuff out on my own and showing what that looks like, doing my own thought leadership. So time management and making myself get stuff done, but I'm finally at the point where I have so many things in place and I have my stuff mapped out for the next couple of months that I'm ready to go, right? So the hardest part was getting started, and so the conventional advice is, it's better to get something done rather than do it perfect. But when you're on the image side of promoting what that's supposed to look like, that's a different context. So it needed to look right, it needed to sound right, it needed to connect, and it needed to be appropriate for my audiences, because I couldn't just jump in and start doing things kind of halfway. So I understand the differences there, but I had to have my stuff at that level before I could launch it. So, right.
Right. Okay, one last quick question.
Okay, I just have one question. So, my question is, I heard you say that you've been doing everything from the back end, so what will be your one ask from us to help you get your name out?
Useful if
And
we
that
dive
kind
in.
Right.
of leads to the last question. Good job, good job. So we will combine those two questions. So answer hers,
Sure.
which actually answers this. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I am terrible at asking for help. I put my head down, try to get stuff done, get frustrated, and just push through. I never really give up on anything, but I don't know how to ask for help. So I don't know what to ask of people other than letting people know I'm available. If you see a business struggling, if their social media looks terrible, if they don't seem to know who they are and can't really connect with their audiences, or if they seem to be struggling or need help, if you see leaders locally who, behind the scenes want help figuring out what their messaging looks like, if that's a political campaign, if that's somebody who's connected to one of these other organizations that want to better connect with their audiences or want to kind of level up the writing behind their keynotes or their video scripts and they want to engage better, just let them know about me.
Follow Pearland Stories.
Follow Pearland Stories, yeah. So I'm trying to share all of your stuff. So if you have events coming up that you're hosting, if you're trying to get information about something, I'm happy to share your information. Just send it to me and let me know about it.
All right. Well, thank you.